I am in Kraków, the former capital of Poland. Kraków is one of the last treasures of Europe undiscovered by mass tourism. It is a city that seamlessly combines history, culture, and modernity. There is much to be said about Kraków, but in today's episode, I hope to convince you that Kraków is a must-see destination, especially for literary pilgrims. As a UNESCO City of Literature, Kraków is filled with literary atmosphere. In addition, the Conrad Festival takes place in Kraków, an annual celebration of literature that attracts writers and literature lovers from all over the world. Kraków, welcome. Tell me, why Kraków is a UNESCO City of Literature?
The reasons are plentiful because, Stanisław Lem, Wisława Szymborska, so a Polish Nobel Prize winning poet, but also Czesław Miłosz, who spent his last years here in Kraków, and his apartment is still here, and it's now a place of literary residencies in Kraków. Well, Joseph Conrad visited Kraków, that's why we have a festival of his name here. But I think that mainly because the city is thriving presently in literary terms. So you have a number of publishing houses, plenty of bookstores, plenty of authors, and a young audience, which I think tells you a little bit about possible future of literature in Kraków. So far, so good. But there's also plenty of places and traces of literature scattered throughout the city. In my hand, I have Tales from a Literary City, and it's a guidebook, literary guidebook through Kraków.
What does it mean, literary guidebook?
Well,
what can I find in them?
A number of things. You can walk through with this book in hand, which is available also online. You can download it. You can take a literary walk with Lem, with Szymborska, with Miłosz, but also a number of places which are not as obvious as the statue of Ada Mickiewicz in the main square. For instance, let's say Kamienica pod Globusem, which is headquarters of Wydawnictwo Literackie, one of the most prominent literary publishing houses in Poland. Absolutely wonderful place which can be visited, which nobody knows because it doesn't operate as a museum. But also
Piwnica pod Baranami?
Very tangible and historic place where literary cabaret, which is something that is unique for Kraków.
I studied here, so I remember.
There you go.
Yes, this place.
So it's been thriving for decades now, and it still is. But there are a number of places like this that opened in Kraków that are just bars, clubs, restaurants where literary events do happen. And first of all, I think, poetry readings. There is no Friday, no Saturday without a number of poetic or literary events. But poetry is something that you can find easily with your eyes closed in Kraków.
The Conrad Festival is an annual place meeting for writers, readers, and thinkers in October. Since 2009, the event has attracted not only local but also international literary voices to Kraków. It was named after Polish-British writer Joseph Conrad, author of, among others, Heart of Darkness, which was basis for the screenplay for Francis Ford Coppola's film Apocalypse Now. The streets of Kraków fill up with literature lovers who walk through the city in a search of the next author meetings, discussions, or workshops. Each edition has a main theme. This year, it is authenticity. The reasons for this choice will be best discussed by the festival director, Olga Drenda. Olga, the idea of this year's festival is authenticity. What does it mean to you?
We are trying to find an answer to this question throughout the entire week. And I believe that there will be many, or perhaps some of our visitors have already returned with their own answers.
I think that literature is largely driven by the engine of empathy.
But as I understand, the selection of writers who were invited to the festival was not accidental.
Yes, exactly. We were trying to, find alignments between the themes in the works of our guests and the theme of authenticity, understood, as I said previously, in many various ways. So we were trying to, for example, give some focus to verification, to the notion of truth, to the notion of being oneself, because I think that we believe that right now we live in the times of focus on oneself in literature. So personal memory, this phenomenon of autofiction, which I am trying to give a more critical spin to, because I think that it's time to have a really nuanced debate on these issues.
Which literary stars will visit Kraków?
We had Adania Szybli, Sebastian Barre, Claudia Piñeiro, who I really love. There was also Tatiana Cybuliak, Lars Sobie Christensen, so one of the most read in the world Norwegian authors, but also Polish names.
Okay, so it's fantastic. It's really international, big festival. So tell me, please, what are the highlights?
There was Pasolini Rework with support of Italian Institute of Culture in Kraków, with Luca Maria Baldini, with Sound Art Live. It was Sound Art created to a previously unknown documentary by Pier Paolo Pasolini that was rediscovered in an archive and was previously thought to be lost.
So, okay, tell me about Conrad Prize Award for the best debut, and who can be nominated to this award?
It's very simple. It's an award given for the best debut in prose in Belles Lettres.
This year, the Conrad Award for the best debut goes to Maria Halder.
It is a prize aimed at promoting and boosting up upcoming authors, emerging fiction writers.
So, tell me about Book Congress.
The Book Congress is always a part of our Conrad Festival. It's a series of events that focus on the issues of the publishing market on many facets. So legal, also institutions, libraries, publishing houses. These are all kinds of discussions dedicated to publishing, marketing, promoting, also pricing of books, everything around book as an item, as an object of promotion, as a good of culture.
The nucleus of the festival is meetings with world-class authors. In a moment, I will talk to one of them, Gabriel Krauss, a British writer with Polish roots, who has gained wide recognition with his debut novel Who They Was, which was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. The book is semi-autobiographical, drawn from Krauss's own experiences in his youth. I have to ask about your Polish roots.
My dual identity in terms of my Polish roots gives me a kind of sense of European culture, of belonging to a larger identity than just a single country.
Okay.
And I think also there's a certain influence of Eastern European kind of literary culture and artistic culture on my work, in the sense that there is a lack of fear in exploring darkness. Whereas in the UK, especially now, in contemporary writing, there's an obsession with kind of stories of hope and joy. And there's an obsession with kind of providing a vision of the world that people would like to believe in. Whereas I don't believe in that. And I think that's completely anathema to the idea of creating serious art. Like, serious art should either represent a certain truth or investigate a certain truth. Or what art is really about is finding a limit, the limit within which you exist artistically or as an individual, and then going beyond those limits, pushing beyond those limits and discovering something new. But what I'm trying to do as a writer is something which is very difficult to convey in the United Kingdom, which is this. I'm interested in pushing for a new form of the novel, which is an autobiographical novel, where everything you write about and everything you describe really happens. The novelistic part of it, the element that makes it literature, is the perspective of you, the subjective view of the writer, and the poetry of your language, and the way in which you experiment with language, you experiment with form. However, everything, the actual content, is real.
The idea behind this year's festival, the Conrad Festival, is authenticity. What does it mean?
Oh, authenticity, I would start off by saying in literary culture, there's a lot of discussion of authenticity, and people talk about wanting authenticity. And particularly in British publishing, there's constantly this discussion about how they want authentic voices. But the reality is they don't really want authentic voices. They want versions of authenticity. They want versions of authenticity that satisfy what they want, satisfy the image of the world that they want, and satisfy the image of the writer that they want. It's according to their requirements. Authenticity is something which basically never betrays itself and which takes risks. And as a person, as a writer, and as an artist, you have to take risks if you're going to be authentic.
Have you got some advice for you are young.
An advice for a younger writer or advice for young writers is simply to not be afraid and to take risks. And when you take a risk, and it's a very important thing to discuss, when you take a risk as a writer and as an artist nowadays, the biggest thing that you're risking is you're risking offending people. And you're risking people not liking you. And you have to embrace that. As an artist or as a writer, you have to embrace that identity of somebody who's going to take risks. That doesn't mean, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that every work of literature has to be as violent or extreme as my own literature, because my own literature isn't violent for the sake of shocking people. My literature and my novel, Who They Was, is, and Tubili Takstali, Who They Was, the reason it's violent is because it represents the reality of that lifestyle, which is very violent, it's very nihilistic, it's unapologetic as well, and most of those stories don't end or kind of follow an arc of redemption, which is what people would like to read, because they would like to believe in that, but unfortunately that's not the reality. So my advice to a writer is you have to take a risk. That, again, that doesn't mean that you have to provoke, because provocation for the sake of provocation is a cheap trick.
I hope that those young boys who have big dreams, who watched Adam Małysz, just like others all over the world.
Invited authors are not the only ones who take risks in their work. The festival's organizers also do this by creating highly original side events like Sport is Poetry. You are taking part in the event Sport is Poetry.
Yes, I do.
So what kind of event is that?
It's an idea invented by director of festival, Olga Drenda. She has a great feeling of contemporary culture, and she is able to see the unusual crossings of different fields. And I think sport in Poland is very neglected. It isn't a part of cultural discussion. It is perceived as something that's very distant from people who create culture. And I do not agree with it. I think it is a great story, the sport itself. It's not based really on achievements or on physics. It's based on what story is being told to us. And this is what's most exciting. The people who are not supposed to win suddenly winning, the people who are like, you only really get interested in it if you can see what's presented, what form of narration it's giving. It is very similar for me to creating a novel, right? And that's why I'm so invested into it. And I also think it's a great way to connect people from different social groups. I think the support in Poland on Polish stadiums is art.
Tell me about your new book, okay?
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, what I need to say is the amazing cover, very crazy one, that was created by a wonderful artist, who's also a poet, Kira Pietrek. And what I asked her...
Yes, it's like my shoes, a little bit, yes, multicultural.
That was the first thing I said when I saw you. It definitely is. I don't have, I have nails that are this color. So the book is about two girls, Edyta and Nat. Edyta is a mother, Nat is her daughter, and she's a single mother and she struggles. She isn't very well off, rather poor, I would say. They live in poor conditions. She's very young when she becomes mother, so it's difficult for her, but they manage to go through it with all the up and downs of this kind of life. They go into years 2000, they manage to break through some obstacles, and hopefully, if the book is liked, I have everything planned for them after that, because there could be a second part of the book. I had a feeling that I just can't plan it, because if people don't like it, why should I write a second book? So I also have something that was, as I see now, compliment reaching, because I wrote in like the note at the end of the book that if you liked it, just let me know that you would like a second book. Okay. And now people are coming to me and they're like, yeah, it's so fantastic. But I feel, you know, like when you're fishing for compliments like that, now tell me that I'm so great. Okay. But it's really nice.
The festival sparkles with different colors. Each of the incoming guests opens up a different world for the audience to immerse themselves in. It certainly does so Claudia Piñeiro, Argentine novelist, best known for her crime mystery novels, most of which were bestsellers. The idea behind this year's festival is authenticity. Is the authenticity important criterion for you? And what does it mean, this term, in general for you?
Authenticity is a word that until recently I've only associated with positive values. As for my work, I believe that even when you work in fiction, as I do, and fiction could be seen as lies, there's still a truth in the story that I want to tell. An inner truth. But why do I now treat the word authenticity with some caution? Why has it started to bother me or feel misused or even distorted?
What does it mean actually?
In my country right now, we have a president who is very aggressive toward the opposition. He says terrible things about other people. Things that if anyone else said, you'd think, how outrageous. How can he say that? Especially since the person is the president of a country. The people who defend him, his supporters, well, they say he's authentic. That's just how he is. That's his style. So under the umbrella of authenticity, it becomes acceptable to attack political opponents, to incite others to attack them too, creating a whole atmosphere of violence. For me, this isn't the kind of society I want to live in, and I believe this is happening in other parts of the world as well.
What does identity to do with authenticity?
I think these are two words that are closely connected. Of course, certain historical contexts can change how we view them, but they are very much related. I think that when one finds the most authentic version of oneself, one also finds their true identity.
In your next book, A Little Luck, a woman returns to a place left 20 years ago, yes, but like a different person with a new identity. And this question about identity, it's important to you?
Yes, it's very important. I believe finding one's true identity is essential, especially for women, but also for men. We've been programmed to be a certain way, and sometimes we don't want to follow those patterns imposed by society. We want to move beyond them, and that's not always easy. So discovering your real identity is something very important. But beyond individual cases, in Argentine society, the word identity has carried a deeper significance since the military dictatorship in Argentina. When people were disappeared, and babies were born to kidnapped women in captivity, or the babies were kidnapped along with their parents and were taken and given to other families. Those children grew up not knowing who they were, not knowing who their parents were, and in some cases possibly being raised by the very people who killed their parents. So there has been a whole movement in search of identity through what we call the grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo, who just celebrated their anniversary. They have spent years searching for those grandchildren who lost their identities. So for Argentine society, the word identity is deeply tied to this history of child appropriation.
So my last question is about you, about your story, about your writing. Please tell me what made that you start writing.
I've been writing for as long as I can remember. From the moment I learned to write, I started writing. I was very young. In my family, there were no artists, no writers, no one connected to literature. So it always felt to me like writers were the others. I could write, yes, but being a writer, that seemed far away. When I finished high school, I wanted to study sociology, but at that time, during the military dictatorship, all the humanities degrees were shut down. I had to choose from what was left, so I studied economics. Even while studying economics, I kept writing. I kept going to writing workshops and developing my craft in other ways. One day, I decided to leave that career path and start writing seriously. I remember I was on a plane, and I saw an ad from Tusquets Publishing House announcing a novel contest. I thought, okay, I'll take some vacation time and write a novel, because otherwise my head is going to explode with all these stories I have inside. So that's what I did. The novel didn't win, but it made it to the top 10 finalists. And that was the first time I felt like something external, a mirror, reflected back to me the possibility that I could be a writer. I thought, well, if I wrote a novel, submitted it, and it made it to the top 10 out of so many manuscripts, then maybe I can be a writer someday. That's what pushed me to start moving from one profession to another.
It's a warm, beautiful autumn evening in Kraków now. It's also a good time of year for reading books. Inspired by the Conrad Festival, I have now a long reading list. But before I immerse myself in a book, I'm taking one last walk around Kraków, especially since it's my beloved city where I studied. It was an extraordinary time in my life, so it will be a sentimental walk.